He looked at patients who had corpus callosumectomies, like the two half of their brains had been split to stop them from having epileptic seizures that would kill them. The result is when you whisper into one ear, only that part of the brain hears it. When you whisper into that ear, only that part of the brain hears it. He would whisper into the right ear, go out in the hallway and get a Coke from the Coke machine. Only this half of the brain heard it, right? Then the guy would go do it. The guy would come back with the Coke. He'd whisper in this ear, why did you just go out in the hallway? Oh, I was really thirsty. So I decided to go get the Coke. But they really felt like they had, that half of the brain made that decision. Then you could show them the video, they're like, oh shit. If you have an economy of AIs, does the economy of AIs actually need money? So suppose you have not just one mind, but you have multiple AI minds, each of which has its own resources, and they want to exchange and they want to collaborate. Fundamentally, each of them can do certain things, and each of them would like certain other things done. Then each of them may be willing to do certain things in exchange for having certain other things done. If you are computers and all of your actions are recorded on chain, or they're recorded online in some verifiable form, you can just have a whole big data structure, which is like, I would do this in exchange for that, I would do this in exchange for that. And you can just have a matching engine that matches the barter offers.
So, Mr. Goertzel, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, we have a fan that's really been pushing for us to have this conversation, so I hope he's excited.
I've been talking to him for like a year. He's like, when are you going to Miami? When are you going to Miami? So
here it is.
Here I am in beautiful Miami. That's right. Yeah.
All right, so we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, probably a lot of philosophy, because this naturally goes into the philosophical domain. Talk about some differences between centralization and decentralization and why this matters for the future of AI. But every time I talk to someone about artificial intelligence, AI, I always like to start by asking a somewhat seemingly simple question, which is the definition of intelligence. Something that, well, we hope we have, I guess, most of us, but it seems actually kind of difficult to define.
As a mathematician, which is my original training, my PhD was in math. Then I got used to trying to pin down the definition of something very, very precisely. And you'll never fully capture the natural language word that way, but you get something that's more crisp, right? Yeah. So when I wrote my first book, The Structure of Intelligence, which came out in like 91, I think, a couple years after I got my PhD, I made some math formulas to the effect intelligence is the ability to achieve complex goals in complex environments, right? And then you can make a mathematical definition of what is complexity. Now, that sort of definition is interesting, but there's still wiggle room, because when you dig into the math, the definition of what is complex needs some reference. It's like what's complex on one reference computer, maybe simpler on another. And then you can prove theorems like when things get big enough, then complex to one computer is about the same as complex to another computer. Yes. So there is a whole mathematical discipline of defining intelligence. And when you go from intelligence to general intelligence, such as artificial general intelligence, AGI, like a term I introduced in 2005, or natural general intelligence, like we all have in our heads, at least on a good day, right? And then you can also formulate that in math, sort of as the ability to generalize beyond your experience. Like, can you take an imaginative guess beyond your experience, beyond all your knowledge?
Is that abstraction?
So there are theorems in learning theory that, in a sense, abstraction is necessary for generalization.
Okay.
And this straight into LLMs and their strengths and weaknesses, because LLMs are what I would call very broad intelligences. Like, I mean, an LLM can, it can write a poem in any language. It knows every branch of math in some sense of know. On the other hand, it's not as good as you or me at generalizing beyond its training data, right? It achieves its breadth via having so much training data. So by the math definitions of AGI that have been around in the field for decades, LLMs are not that generally intelligent because their ability to generalize is not that great. So then, Sam Altman says, well, hold on. These are very generally intelligent because look how general is their intelligence, right? And again, in natural language, you can say that, but the kind of generality that LLMs have is what I'd called in research papers decades ago breadth. Like it's a broad intelligence.
Right.
It can do a whole bunch of things. It doesn't generalize that well, but what's confusing is it generalizes a bit sometimes, right? It's just not as well as we do, and this leads to current confusions in the AI field. Like some people think just make LLMs bigger and bigger, and you will get to a human level AGI. Some of us think, while we are probably close to human level AGI in time, like maybe a few years off, bigger and bigger LLMs won't do it. Like you need other sorts of algorithms coupled together with it.
Yeah.
Other sorts of algorithms that are more capable of abstraction and therefore generalization.
Okay. All right. A lot of ways to go, but I'm going to go back to the definition of intelligence. Sure. And I think you said the ability to solve a complex set of problems across
in complex environments.
Environments. So then the definition of complex becomes very important.
Right, but there's a whole bunch of math underlying that.
Yeah, well, this is what I want to ask, because I think in dynamical systems theory, the example I recall reading was something like, the individual rock, you take one rock out of the pile, it doesn't really affect the properties of the other rocks. But you take one star out of that galaxy, the whole galaxy starts to move differently. So is that, I guess, trying to define complex now in terms of a way that serves the definition of intelligence?
Yeah, so the default way to define complexity in this context, in the math theory of intelligence, is minimum description length. So like how long is the shortest description of the thing? And then you can play with that in many ways. Like how long is the shortest description of some close approximation to that pile of rocks that will keep doing the pile of rocks thing for a long time? Versus how long is the shortest description of a galaxy that will do the same thing as that galaxy over a long period of time. And then that gets into chaos as well, because if the pile of rocks is just sitting there, coding a close approximation, that pile of rocks that will just sit there is going to be a pretty simple computational loop. Coding a galaxy that will have the same dynamics as that galaxy, you're going to have to get it very close to right? Because small changes are going to cause big changes in the dynamics. So it's going to be a much longer.
I was going to say, you hit.
It's going to be a much longer description length for describing the galaxy in a way that will closely approximate its dynamics.
Well, at some point, doesn't it go beyond the realm of possibility? I was thinking of combinatorial explosion and the three-body problem. Like, once you get to the scale of trillions or billions of stars in a galaxy, it becomes impossible.
This gets deep into the physics, but and we have to have some respect for our ignorance of physics. But if you take quantum mechanics, or say the standard model of nuclear force and electromagnetism, if you take that as truth, which it probably isn't absolute truth, but if we take that as truth, then there is no true chaos at the quantum level. There's approximations of chaos, and everything that has ever happened in the universe is recorded somewhere in the wave function of the universe. So actually, it's not impossible for some superintelligence to predict everything. Now, there's subtlety, because general relativity, the best theory we have of gravitation, does not have that property. It is fundamentally chaotic, and we haven't figured out how to reconcile quantum theory with general relativity. Yeah. So, in the end, our knowledge of physics is insufficient to tell us, like, can a superintelligence hypothetically fully model and predict what a galaxy does? Like we don't know. Maybe we'll know 10 years from now if we built a superintelligence and it can tell us.
But you're saying that what we know about the quantum domain so far does not preclude that possibility.
It doesn't. No. Which is
what about the probability waves and all of this? Doesn't that mean it's non-deterministic? If you have certain probability functions occurring in the quantum domain, doesn't that make it unpredictable?
It means there are limits to predicting things.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you're talking about predicting the movements of stars in a galaxy or something, I mean, these are not quantum indeterminate like the movement of an electron. So yeah, this is very this is very deep into mathematical.
Well, it seems less. Well, it gets straight into epistemology too, because like this whole idea of prediction, it's very closely related to that idea of abstraction, right? If you can just observe general phenomena and then abstract out a principle, you know, like force equals mass times acceleration, and this explains the motions of so many things, short of the quantum domain, then that becomes like a very useful tool, an explanatory tool for interpreting what you see in the world.
We still use F equals ma in the quantum domain also.
Oh, we do.
Actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just your ways of the kinds of forces are different.
Right.
Although
I thought below Planck length you can't measure.
Well, below Planck length you can't measure it. Yeah. I spent some time once when I was much younger and had more free time fleshing out how would the universe work if F equaled mv instead of F equals ma.
What is mv?
Velocity. What if force is proportional to velocity instead of acceleration?
Interesting.
Like you can still have a universe, right? But everything works very differently because
velocity is speed and direction, and acceleration is rate of change of speed.
Right. So the fact that force is acceleration is why chemistry works, right? But on the other hand, you could still have alternate universes with different foundational physical laws, which is it's quite interesting. You would imagine at some point we could build a virtual reality like that. You can port yourself into it,
right.
See how crazy it drives you.
Yeah,
right? You will cope with that better than ChatGPT.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we will all cope with it very badly.
Yeah,
but we will cope with it better than ChatGPT because we can pivot and leap into the great unknown to a greater extent than a system like an LLM with its limited abstraction.
Is it the imagination? Is that the human imagination doing that?
Imagination is part of it. Yeah, but there's an interesting duality between imagination and factual grounding. LLMs are not as creatively imaginative as us. They're also not as able to ground their lame imaginations in reality as we are. And these two work together, right? Like how creativity works is you generate a bunch of cool random stuff.
Yeah.
Then you test it against observed reality.
Yeah.
And if you can't test against observed reality, you better limit your imagination or you'll be completely insane, which happens to some people, of course, right? They have defects in reality discrimination, and then we call them schizophrenic and so forth.
Sure.
So LLMs both lack the generative creativity people have, and they lack the instinct for evaluating their ideas against observed realities, right? And I mean, obviously, these are both super important aspects of being a human-like general intelligence, which is why I think you need to add some other things on to LLMs to get a human-like AGI. Like you need to add on something that's more creative, like an evolutionary algorithm. You need to add on something. It could be a logic engine or it could be a different kind of neural net, but you need to add on something that models the world and compares ideas to the world. Right now, I think you can do that. I don't think it's a fundamental obstacle. I think you can do it with digital computers. But it is different than just training bigger and bigger language models.
How important? Because I recall paraphrasing something Carl Friston said, like the organism's anatomy is a map of its environment. How important is embodiment to intelligence? Essential?
Well, I mean, my friend Pei Wang, who's been an AGI researcher for, I guess, as long as I have, since the 80s, he wrote a paper once called "A Laptop is a Body." Okay. So, I mean, the point is, we're not talking about AIs living in the spiritual domain with no body. I mean, the computer also has sensors, right? And it's also actuating, like the screen is impacting the world. So, I mean, of course, there's inputs and outputs, and I mean, the informational richness of the input and output is important, and the ability to act on the world and then see what your action did and integrate that into your model of the world. All that is important. That doesn't mean you need a body in the sense of like a robot body that looks like a human's body. I mean, if you think about it, the internet itself has an insane amount of sensors all over the place
Mm-hmm.
and an insane ability to take actions all over the world, right? So I
Can
mean,
you
the
double
internet
click on
is a
that?
body. It's just a different body than ours.
Can you double click on that term action? That's a very important term in economics, and I'm not clear on how inanimate objects perform action. Like I can't imagine, say if all the people vanish at the snap of a finger, well then the internet, computers, these things aren't going to take actions anymore. Is that correct?
I guess that depends on how you're defining it, how you're defining an action, for sure.
Yeah, Mises says the use of means to pursue ends. So I was going to try to take this into another perspective on intelligence. It's like, okay, you can solve a complex set of problems across a number of complex domains, but isn't also an aspect of intelligence deciding which goals you're going to pursue in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think that decision is just another form of self-organizing dynamic in a complex system. So another way to define intelligence, getting into the philosophy of it, my friend Weaver, aka David Weinbaum, wrote a PhD thesis called Open-Ended Intelligence. And he comes more from a continental philosophy background, like Deleuze and Baudrillard and Guattari and all that, as well as complex systems. What he's looking at is an open-ended intelligence is a system that self-organizes so as to maintain its own boundaries and its own integrity, and also seeks to self-transform and modify itself into something going fundamentally beyond what it was before. And there's a certain dialectic between these things, right?
Sure.
And he sees all life forms, going back to single cells and maybe before, as manifesting this sort of dialectic between individuation and self-transcendence.
Yes.
And making up new goals to pursue is then part of the self-organizing activity. And the decision process is also, I mean, you would have dug enough into the philosophy of free will to know that when we think we're deciding something is not actually when our brain is making the decision, right? Like you've seen these experiments of Michael Gazzaniga with split brain patients.
No.
So this is very interesting. So what he did in this case, he looked at patients who had corpus callosumectomies, like the two half of their brains had been split to stop them from having terrifying epileptic seizures that would kill them. The result is when you whisper into one ear, only that part of the brain hears it. When you whisper into that ear, only that part of the brain hears it, right? So he would whisper into the right ear, go out in the hallway and get a Coke from the Coke machine, right? And only this half of the brain heard it, right? Then the guy would go do it. The guy would come back with the Coke. He'd whisper in this ear, why did you just go out in the hallway? Oh, I was really thirsty. So I decided to go get the Coke, right?
So it's rationalization.
Yeah. But they really felt like they had, that half of the brain made that decision. Like it felt like it had made that decision.
Interesting.
But actually in that case, then you could show them the video. They're like, oh shit, right? So Benjamin Libet, a neuroscientist, did some studies like this, found that in many cases, it's about half a second before we feel like we're making the decision, the unconscious brain actually makes that decision. And he did some simple experiments like, click a clicker to make a little pointer stop. And we thought we decided at one point, but we actually decide a little bit earlier. Now, that doesn't mean there's no decision process that's meaningful, right? It just means that the acutely conscious decision process that we feel like is making the decision is a sort of shadow of the unconscious process that is actually making the decision. This reminds me of a quote from Friedrich Nietzsche, which was, consciousness is like the army commander taking responsibility after the fact for the decision of his troops, right?
Right.
So it's,
makes sense.
It means that free will, in some sense, is an illusion, but not in every sense, right? Like I think there still is a sort of decision-making dynamic in a human's brain or a dog's brain, which is not there in a rock, right? Now, whether that dynamic is there in a hurricane I don't know.
Yeah, this
Right?
is where
Because that is a complex self-organizing system. It's doing stuff. You could say in its early stages of formation, it's individuating and self-transcending
Sure.
and growing. Now,
Sure.
does it have an unconscious goal it's pursuing? Like,
Well, yeah, and this is
maybe.
where, I've seen philosophers draw the line between living and non-living systems as that of autopoiesis, right? So like a hurricane is self-organizing, but what a hurricane won't do is seek out conditions that further its
Are you
self-organization.
sure?
Well, it'll just make landfall and destroy itself.
Well, but
If a hurricane was like trying to optimize for its survivability, it'd probably just circle in the ocean for a long time, right?
if that were its only goal, but that's not our only goals either. I mean, we can suicide bomb,
True.
right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the point...
They're not the same, but there's an interesting fact I've been playing with recently, which is the equations for optimal control. So there's certain equations that govern the system trying to get from a starting point to an ending point. I find the most efficient way to get from start to the end. This is called dynamic programming or optimal control. Now, the optimal control equations turn out to be equivalent to the fluid dynamic equations.
Interesting.
Like the Navier-Stokes equation underlying fluids. So you can map the one into the other by a certain.
Is that related to the traveling salesman problem?
No,
it's not. Okay.
Well, the traveling salesman problem, it's another graph problem, right? Because the optimal control is equivalent to finding the shortest path through a graph from point A to point B.
Yeah.
The traveling salesman is not the shortest path from A to B. The traveling salesman is finding the most efficient path to visit a whole bunch of nodes in the graph.
Yeah, it's the shortest path to achieve the goal, but it's
true, but it's a little bit different. But there's a theorem that if you look at what fluids are doing, like air or water or hurricane or waves or whatever, then the dynamics on the space of volume preserving transformations on the fluid are optimal control. So in a sense, mathematically, every fluid is making a decision process of how to organize itself step by step. Now, there's a lot to unravel here.
Forget multivitamins and other supplements. Animal organs are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You can get 100 times more nutrients from organs than you can from muscle meats. But the problem with eating organs is that they are difficult to find in stores, they are difficult to prepare, and even when they are prepared well, they often don't taste great. Thankfully, Heart and Soil Supplements has made consuming organ meats so much easier by providing powderized organs in capsule form. Organ meats include everything your body needs to thrive: vitamins, minerals, peptides, proteins, and growth factors. This is why organ meats were the most prized foods for our ancestors. Fortunately for us, Heart and Soil makes these treasured foods easily accessible. So go to heartandsoil.co today and use discount code BREEDLOVE to get started on your journey to optimal health and vitality. Again, that's heartandsoil.co, discount code BREEDLOVE. Would you rather have 1 Bitcoin today or 2 Bitcoin a few years from now? Bitcoin mining is a tried and true strategy for accumulating Bitcoin. Over a 2 to 4 year time frame, successful miners have consistently accumulated more Bitcoin than they otherwise would with a traditional dollar cost average strategy. Blockware mining as a service enables you to start mining Bitcoin from your laptop. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost power to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. Plus, with Blockware's one-of-a-kind mining marketplace, you can buy and sell live Bitcoin miners with just a few keystrokes. In this marketplace, buyers get to purchase live machines at vetted facilities, enabling them to mine with zero lead time. And sellers get the opportunity to liquidate their machines and hosting contracts at will. This means you can mine Bitcoin with zero long-term commitment and high liquidity on your mining rigs. Blockware will even cover your energy bill for 1 week per mining rig when you sign up at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Again, that's 1 free week of Bitcoin mining at mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. And on top of this offer, you can also use code BREEDLOVE to get $100 off your first mining rig with Blockware Solutions. Well, first of all, it's a wonderful book by Alan Watts, Watercourse Way, Taoism, super deeply interesting. It does seem to come back to that issue of predictability or ability to model, right? Because sure, we can now model the course of a river with higher fidelity into the future than we could, I don't know, pre-fluid dynamics.
But then we could pre-AI also.
Pre-AI,
Yeah.
but you know, we can't do that at all for a human being still to this day, right? You can't tell a human what they're going to do. There's not certain conditions you can put any human being into and get a guaranteed response.
Not guaranteed.
Whereas if you put water in 0 degrees centigrade, it will freeze. So there seems to be this unbridgeable gulf between
we can't predict
natural and
turbulent
social.
fluid flow with any precision either, though. Like as you increase the Reynolds number and a fluid gets turbulent.
Yes, but you know that it'll be turbulent though.
Yeah. So, but if you take this mapping from decision making into fluid dynamics, what you find is in fluids there's something called the Reynolds number. When you ramp it up, you get more turbulent.
Yeah.
And when you ramp it down, it gets calmer.
Yeah.
That corresponds in decision making to the explore versus exploit dichotomy.
Mm-hmm.
So more turbulent is like more exploratory. You're just trying different stuff. And a less turbulent, smoother flow is like exploiting what you know already, right? And so I mean, I think there's actually a parallel, right? Like if you have a non-turbulent fluid, you can predict what it's going to do. If you have people who are exploiting what they know already, you can probably predict what they're going to do. If people are exploring more wildly, it's very hard to predict. Just like a turbulent fluid is very hard to predict.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I buy the biological exceptionalism. Actually, I think our heads may well be, the most complex self-organizing systems on the planet. On the other hand, could Jupiter have hurricanes, which are more generally intelligent than us? I mean, it could well, right?
Quickly becomes semantic in a way, but okay, so because another definition I've heard for intelligence is that the ability to choose different paths to achieve the same goal. And so that sounded a lot like you were just describing as finding the shortest path.
I mean, that would be a corollary of intelligence.
And so then the question would be, okay, then if that's part of intelligence, and you're saying maybe Jupiter or maybe the hurricane has intelligence, like where is the telos in these things? What is the goal of a Jupiter or a hurricane?
We got to find out. Yeah, I mean,
or how would we even know that it had one? Like, I mean, I guess we'd have to see it do the same thing over and over again, and we would infer that it had a goal. But how could we ever know that an inanimate body had a goal?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's correct to describe a hurricane or the red spot in Jupiter as inanimate, because they're moving, right? They're animated. They're moving and they're preserving their own boundary. But they're a very different kind of system than we are.
Let's just say non-human then.
Did you ever read the novel Solaris by Stanislaw Lem?
No.
That's a great one. Yeah. He's the best-selling science fiction writer of all time, actually.
Okay.
But I mean, in the Soviet bloc.
Yeah.
But so there's an amazing Russian movie by Tarkovsky, like 4-hour-long Soviet cinema. There's a much worse Steven Soderbergh movie that was made much later, which turned into a love story. But anyway, in the novel Solaris, these spacefaring humans discover a very, very complexly self-organizing ocean covering the surface of some far-off planet in another star system. And it's making these amazing, complex, self-organized fractal patterns. Scientists keep trying to understand, like, what the hell it is, and is it thinking, or what is its goal, or what is it really doing? Then, it being a Russian novel, after a couple hundred years, the scientists give up and go home. Right? They're just like, well, okay, clearly it's very complex, probably more intelligent than us in some sense. We are not able to understand what it's doing. Now, I mean, if we're a modern novel, you would have someone write an AI to try to understand what it's doing. And then you would find you couldn't understand the AI, right? But this novel was in the 60s. I read it when I was a little kid. But so, I mean, but the theme there is the same as you just said, right? Like if it's an alien, non-human mind, indeed, how can we tell if it has a goal or a thought or has empathy or what? We can't necessarily. We may face the same issue with dolphins and whales right now. Like we don't really know how intelligent or in what sense they're intelligent, right? We know the
Yeah.
projection of their intelligence into
Sure.
the things that we can interface with. But those maybe, if the greatest quantum physicist in the world, meets the greatest shaman from some Amazonian tribe, but they don't have a common language, like how are they interacting? They're interacting about like sharing a snack to eat or playing soccer, right? But the main things that makes each of them interesting are not.
Yeah.
They're not even there, and they're not in their dialogue, and that's even the same species, right? Just very different cultures with different languages. And this gets back to your point on embodiment, though, because while I don't think an AI needs a human-like embodiment in order to be generally intelligent, if we want to create AGIs that we can communicate with and that will be helpful to us and will be nice to us as they evolve and we evolve, having the AIs understand something of what it is to be human would seem to be very convenient, right?
Sure.
And so from that standpoint, having one of the things the AGI does be to control a vaguely human-like body would seem very helpful, right? Because then it will understand,
have empathy,
understand the situation that we're in, right? It will be able to have empathy for us, and we'll be able to make like more sensible judgments about what we really want and need, and interpret what we're saying and so forth, right? So, I mean, I think for that reason, putting AIs in human-like bodies and in general having them interact in a human-like way with our world is quite important. But it's not because that's a prerequisite for general intelligence. It's because it seems like the best bet for making AGIs that are team players with us.
Yeah. Okay. Giving them skin in the game, so to speak.
Although that's the big weakness of robots now, right? Robot skin is not too advanced.
They don't have.
They're good at seeing and hearing. There's a bunch of research lab projects with robot skin, actually. So we can make it, but there's just hasn't been enough of a use case for anyone to scale up manufacture at low cost.
Right. Interesting.
Robot that can purr when you pet it. I mean, I would think it would be popular.
Yeah. Try to define that spectrum between centralization and decentralization. Sure. And then let's talk about how it pertains to the future development of AI.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, there's many possible kinds of intelligence, right? And I mean, the human brain has a certain measure of centralization, like the hindbrain, right? Like the part that breathes and heartbeats. Like you got one heart, you've got two lungs. So there's a certain amount of centralization in the human brain, which is about keeping the infrastructure going. But then the cortex, the part that does the abstract thinking, is more of a complex self-organizing system. I mean, there's some regions that are specialized for vision or for language or something, but if your visual cortex is damaged, sometimes some other part of the brain will take over that task of doing vision also, right? So we have a sort of high-level centralization. Then we have a lot of loose self-organization where each part of the brain, each neuron are doing their own thing. The concept of decentralization I think of as having a causal network where there's no one node or one small region of the system that has an overwhelming causal influence over all the rest, right? So like there's no one or two nexuses of control over the whole network. Like causal impact is coming from all over the place, right? And there's a sense in which that's inevitable because of how physics works. Like there's quantum mechanics says there's only a certain amount of information you can pack in a certain volume. That's quantum theory and general relativity together. It's called the Beaconstein bound. Then special relativity says information can only travel the speed of light in vacuum at maximum. So that essentially means beyond a certain scale, any physical system is going to be decentralized, right? Like even if there's the center, it takes a long time for the message to get from the middle to the center. So if the parts from the middle to the periphery, rather. So if the parts on the periphery are doing anything, either they're waiting for the messages to come from the headquarters, which will make them dumb and inefficient,
maladaptive,
or they're doing something on their own, right? So there's some level of decentralization which is just required if physics is correct. On the other hand, obviously, that's a sort of in principle thing. And if you look at larger scales, like human systems or computer systems, there are degrees of decentralization, right? Like China is a more centralized economy than Somalia, which U.S. is also more centralized than Somalia, but less so than China, right? And in computer networks, I mean, the server farms that Google or Microsoft has, there's a whole lot of machines in there, and they're doing distributed processing spread across machines. But there's hubs to those networks that send all the software out and coordinate all the processes. Whereas a network like Bitcoin or any other blockchain network, it's more decentralized than Google or Microsoft server farm, right? Like there's no one machine that sends out the signals to control everything in that network. And so, I mean, decentralization in itself doesn't really guarantee any other beneficial property. It's just the absence of centralization, right?
Yeah.
And in some cases, centralization is what you want and is very efficient. Like if you're running a preschool, it's quite good to have an adult teacher who is a central authority and tells the kids what to do, right? So sometimes centralization is what you want, and sometimes it's very pathological, right?
It's a weird trade-off. There's that saying that if you want to go far, go alone. No, I'm sorry. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so the idea that, if you just have one guy, one plan moving the whole organization or the nation, whatever it is, like, oh, that's very easy to do. Everyone just get behind this plan and move. But that tends to not persist so well over time. Those things tend to become corrupt or misdirected. So you need the market feedback. You need the collectivity to sort of give its feedback to make sure that you're optimizing for survivability over time.
The real systems are hierarchical in structure, right? So if you take the example of preschools on my mind, because I have little kids at home, but I mean, you do want each preschool to be centralized and have some adult who knows what they're doing. On the other hand, you don't necessarily want a centralized department of preschools, right?
Right.
So what happens is each preschool teacher or director may be the benevolent dictator of their preschool, but outside of that, you have a self-organizing system which is not centralized, where parents can decide.
Isn't this a difference?
They can decide which dictator to choose for
because
the
centralization
preschool, right?
that's desirous at the preschool is because children are pre-rational beings, right? They need centralized, rational beings sort of over. That's what parents are, right? Caregivers.
Yeah.
But the actual network of preschools, as you described, that would be adult to adult relations.
Yeah,
so
but
isn't
that is one case? But I mean, in a sports team or something, you often also want to have one guy who is ultimately calling the shots, right? And
it depends on the sport.
Right. But sometimes you do, and that's because of information processing limits, right? Like you have to make snap decisions. Yeah. And if you're focused on doing your own thing, you're not watching what everyone else is doing. Yeah. So having someone whose job it is to watch the holistic picture and make decisions based on that is also valuable. But again, it's a limited context, right? Like you don't want to become an indentured servant to your coach, right?
That's the opt-in, opt-out is what's key.
Yeah. So I think if you have a hierarchical system, when your top level is centralized, you're taking a big risk, right?
Yes.
Because what happens?
That's a monopoly.
Yeah, right. Or it's a dictator who may be benevolent until it's not benevolent, right? And then you don't have much recourse for adjusting things except a revolution, which basically the revolution
just installs another guy. Installs another dictator.
The new boss, same as the old boss. Right. So, I think for money, which obviously you've thought a lot about, there's fundamental advantages to decentralization in terms of making corruption more difficult, right? And for AI, there's also fundamental benefits to decentralization in terms of just getting a more open-ended cognitive dynamic instead of having like one central thing that may be doing the wrong thing, control all the rest of the mind. But I think with AI, it's a little subtler than that. Even there's sort of two reasons why you want decentralization in AI systems. I mean, one is it can save you from cognitive pathologies of excessive centralization. It saves you from like one controlling cognitive module going awry, right? So if all the different parts of your AI system have some causal efficacy and can contribute, you have more reliability that the whole system will not go in some messed up cognitive direction. But the other point is our AI systems, for now, until the singularity, are embedded in human society and economy, right? And if you have a centralized AI system, some jerk with guns just has to take over the central node, and then they control the whole AI system. And guess what? There are many jerks with guns who want to do that. If you have a decentralized AI system, not only are you protected against the central hub being dumb or making a mistake that the other cognitive lobes can't correct, I mean, you also have something where no human party can take over the whole thing. And this is where you get into a quite contentious ground in terms of AI ethics and people's fears about the future of AI, right? Because there's a quote from Ram Dass, the guru from my childhood, which is, "Relax, nothing is under control." Right? And if you're sort of anarchic by nature, like myself, that makes immediate sense, right? But to many people, this is exactly the wrong direction. Like, what? There's got to be someone in charge. Come on.
Bitcoin custody is evolving. Onramp is pioneering a new model, multi-institution custody, which eliminates single points of failure and adds fault tolerance to your setup. With Onramp's multi-institution custody, your funds are auditable on-chain, cannot be rehypothecated, and can only be moved with your explicit direction. Multi-institution custody simplifies private key management, providing unparalleled peace of mind for you and your loved ones. Onramp also helps you seamlessly tap into financial services like trading, inheritance, loans, and more, all without compromising on accessibility. So schedule a consultation with the Onramp team today to learn more at onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. Again, that's onrampbitcoin.com/breedlove. One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove. We have, what's the saying? The problem with the world is we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technologies. Is that a hangover of our Paleolithic emotions that we're used to having some strong man guide the tribe, and so that's just left over in our evolutionary makeup or something?
Yeah, I mean, both extremes may be relics of our evolutionary makeup, right? Like both the desire to have a big, tough guy looking over us, and the desire to be free of it and have utter chaos and anarchy. Like these probably are both immature, emotional things that go back to the great apes who spawned us, right? And I mean, definitely we are governed by, the reptilian hindbrain and then a bunch of early hominid brain, and we can override that only partially and with great effort over the course of our lives. And indeed, the process of overcoming this sort of cognitive legacy we have is much slower than the process of AI is getting smarter and smarter.
Right.
So now, indeed, we have big decisions about AI. And if you believe AGI at the human level is coming soon, which I do, we have big decisions to make soon, which is like, is it better to have AGI decentralized with no single owner or controller, or no small group of owners or controllers, or is it better to have it controlled by some trustworthy party who will like shepherd its development? And I think
the trustworthy is always the problem.
There's the thing. There's a philosophical question there. Like conceptually, is it better to have open and decentralized, or to have some really good, beneficial, wise people sort of guiding the development? And then there's the question of, is it better to have it decentralized versus having the people actually in charge of the world now guide its development, which is a very different question, right? Because if you had Plato's philosopher kings like governing the development of AGI for the common good, I mean, maybe that would be better than an open and decentralized network, which does have some potential risks. It's something to analyze and think about. If I look at the leaders of the major nations today,
far from that.
Yeah, like these are not Plato's philosopher kings. And of them, like, do we really trust these apparatuses to guide our transition into the singularity in the next intelligent species? Like, we might rather take a gamble on the self-organizing, decentralized networks, right?
Yeah. Okay, I want to go. I think there's a connection here, actually. Like this idea. You've seen the murmuration of starlings, right? Those birds that kind of move as one collective organism.
Yeah, sure.
And I've seen that.
I've made computer simulations in that in the 90s.
So it exhibits like, again, it looks like kind of one organism and has very complex movement. But the actual, what's underpinning that are the rules that each one of these birds is running. They're just like, stay 2 feet away from all other birds. And, every time one moves one direction, you imitate, basically. So it's like very simple rules giving rise to extremely complex emergent behavior.
Yeah.
And so and then you'd be like, okay, well, where's the intelligence in the murmuration of starlings? Like, it's not, the individual birds are just running a very simple algorithm, but then somehow you get this complex kind of intelligent looking movement. I'm wondering if there is some connection there. Like the Cicero said something like, the more laws, the less justice. Like the more we try to complexify and control things, like it's almost like squeezing something and it's sliding between your fingers, like you're creating the opposite effect of what you want. You're trying to grab it, but it's literally squeezing between your fingers. Should we be looking to just optimize for some simple, basic, I don't know what these would be, ethical rules, moral rules for AI to like keep it decentralized, or assuming decentralized would be the right path because we don't have these philosopher kings? I mean, so far as I know, I don't think we found any across all of human history. We've had a few prophets. Someone might say Marcus Aurelius was one, but we all have our flaws. So what else it reminds me of is there's this meme that says like, it's like this self-refuting philosophy of government. Government exists because people left ungoverned are evil. And it's like, okay, but governments are run by people left unchecked. So it's like this weird sort of circular reasoning.
This was the issue I had with anarchy, which I've been very attracted to. I mean, the most anarchic places on earth are like Somalia and so forth, which I would rather live in China in the end. So far, the absence of government seems to lead to bands of armed mercenaries going around and recruiting your 10-year-old son forcefully into their mercenary pack, right? So I mean, in the end, the state is not an excrescence like on top of human organization, right? It's just one among many perverse ways that people organize themselves,
Yeah.
and seems to be better than quasi-statelessness with bands of armed mercenaries roaming around. Now, before we made fancy weapons, the armed mercenaries weren't as scary,
Yeah.
and not having a centralized government worked better, right?
Yeah.
So there's a complex feedback between the technologies we've developed and the social organization modes that we can have, right? Because before we had modern weaponry, I mean, once you have machine guns, even, and cars, then you're beyond that, and it seems like we haven't found a way to regulate things that's better than having a state, right?
Yeah. Well,
But then AI is a whole different technology, and it's not clear that the modern way of organizing states can survive the advent of AI, right?
Yeah, well, it doesn't seem like their revenue models are going to survive the emergence of Bitcoin either. I mean, it takes away inflation in the long run, and then it makes taxation much more difficult. So,
True.
Statism faces a lot of technological challenges in the 21st century.
Bitcoin, however, is a small percent of the global economy, and I would say it's not rising as fast as AI is rising. So I would say that the threat to the social order from AI will get there before the threat from Bitcoin gets there.
I guess time will tell about that. You mentioned this connection to money earlier. I wonder if you said you'd thought about defining money. So I'd love to ask you the namesake of the show.
I thought about defining money from a number of directions. I mean, one of which is if you have an economy of AIs, right? Then does the economy of AIs actually need money, right? I mean, so suppose you have not just one mind, but you have multiple AI minds, each of which has its own resources, and they want to exchange and they want to collaborate.
How would they exchange anything other than money?
So the scheme that I thought of that could be more effective is a sort of computationally mediated barter network, basically. So, I mean, barter is what we used to do in large part before we had money. I mean, and in the early stages, early forms of money coexisted with different forms of barter. But if you have a network of humans or AIs, I mean, fundamentally, each of them can do certain things, and each of them would like certain other things done, right? And then each of them may be willing to do certain things in exchange for having certain other things done. And barter is inefficient among humans above a certain small scale, right? I mean, it works on the little island where I live near Seattle in some things because there's just not that many people around, right?
Yeah. Well.
But clearly it doesn't work for a whole city or a whole country. On the other hand, if you are computers and all of your actions are recorded on chain, or they're recorded online in some verifiable form, and you can then record all of your requests and all your offers, everything you would like in a computational form, you can just have a whole big data structure, which is like, I would do this in exchange for that. I would do this in exchange for that. I would do this in exchange for that. And you can just have a matching engine that matches the barter offers. And then that's not viable for a human society, but among a society of AI, it can all be much simpler. This lets you reflect on like, how would money emerge from this sort of network? So suppose you had a huge just barter network of offers to do X in exchange for Y. You had an AI matching engine that would match actions with requests, right? I mean, that could work perfectly well. It burns some compute costs in doing all the matching, but that's not that hard a problem for computers right now. Now, how would money emerge out of that? I mean, in essence, you could say, well, okay, to simplify things, we will just assign a single dimensional value to each action, right? And you say like, what's the single dimensional value that best approximates like what can I get for doing this thing? But it makes you reflect on whether money really needs to be one dimensional.
Well, I think
it doesn't really need to be.
I think there's a very there's a key problem that fails to address, and that is the problem of uncertainty, and specifically uncertainty related to the future. Because a good definition for money actually is that it is an insurance policy on uncertainty, right? It can be used to obtain anything that the marketplace can bear in terms of goods or services. So as a market actor facing the horizon of the future, which is inherently uncertain, I can't possibly know what solutions, what goods or services I'll need in the future. Therefore, I hold at least some percentage of my assets in cash to know that no matter what happens to me, I have the highest, the widest set of options, and therefore the widest ability to respond to uncertainty itself. And so I think that always creates demand for money. Even if you had a perfect, informationally perfect barter matching system, those individual agents still aren't going to be able to predict what they want in the future or what others want in the future.
I mean, just computation power could serve that role, right? Like, I mean,
well, then you're just back to Bitcoin, basically. It's just, you're basically taking your system and then you've abstracted an uncertainty layer on top of it and you've tokenized it. And if it's backed by energy, then that is Bitcoin.
But there are many, that's what I mean by you could layer money on top of this. So let's say you say, okay, if I want something that's going to be valuable onward into the future, let's assume it's computation power. Then you still have to decide, is it GPUs? Is it CPUs? Like which kind of computer are you actually retaining for computation power? It could be a computational abstraction of manufacturing power also, right? Or the ability to make stuff. And then you get into, now we're back to what is money, right? You're looking at money. What you're getting to is like money is an abstraction, whereas if you hold that abstracted entity, then that will give you the power to get stuff in the future in a way that's robust with respect to future evolution, right? And you could layer that on top of a barter network, which is what I think is going to happen among AIs, because I think in the short run, I think just directly doing exchanges of services for services is more efficient than projecting everything to a single number. But you're right, over the long run, there's so much uncertainty that the projection to a single number may be throwing out less, right? Because you're not throwing it, there's not that much detail that you know. But that gets into how well can the AGI predict the future, though, right? We're saying we don't know what's going to be valuable in the future. So instead of maintaining a specific capability, we'll just maintain a single number. But maybe if the AGI can predict what's useful in the future better, maybe it does. That's just like, you may think crude oil is a better investment, and you may want to hold that instead, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a probabilistic / risk element to anything that you hold, because that's what, again, you're dealing with uncertainty, right? You could be right, you could be wrong. And so I don't think, I guess there's an underlying debate here. It's like whether, okay, perfect certainty is achievable. I, for one, I would subscribe to the idea that no, that's simply impossible. I think knowledge is inherently limited. It's a map, right? It can be a very useful map towards varied ends, but I don't think the map can ever equal the territory. The territory is always infinitely more complex than the map can ever be.
Certainly for a human-like mind, that is the case.
For any type of mind. If it were ever perfectly encompassing of the entire territory, then it would no longer be a map. It would be the territory. It would be, like, how could you contain all of the data of the universe in some simplified, compressed form? You necessarily reveal some aspects of the universe, probably some, general operating mechanics, but you also conceal others.
Oh, you could have transformations that just shift emphasis or focus without removing information.
Yeah, see, I don't subscribe to that. I can't think of any map that does not exclude
I understand,
some aspects
but your
of the
life
territory.
is restricted to the human domain.
Well, I mean, that's the best metaphor we've got, but so is yours. You're also restricted to the human domain. So how could we?
Somewhat, but I'm leveraging more abstract math in my thinking, which gives you some ways to envision structures beyond the human domain. Because if we were just going by everyday human life metaphors, we'd never invent quantum mechanics or black holes either. Like we don't see
Actually,
those.
we did use metaphors to invent those things. That's what,
Kind of,
Einstein
right.
used the, metaphor of a rubber sheet to describe the curvature of space-time. And then he, used the point of infinite singularity to theorize the black hole, which we later observed. So all of our ecstatic, rational relation to the world occurs through metaphor. Even mathematics is metaphorical.
To some extent, yeah.
I think at root it is. Even the idea of 1, 2, 3, these are just metaphors for groupings, right? So, yeah, I would be I don't know. So do you think that perfect predictability is possible? That seems to be the underlying.
Probably not. I don't need to know that right now. Like what we need to know is how to build the next thing beyond us and make it benevolent toward us. And then that next thing can resolve a bunch of questions that we don't know the answer to.
So how do we know when that superintelligence has emerged, and how do we know whether it's benevolent or malevolent?
I think there's not a exact litmus test for superintelligence, but I mean, you can point at some fairly clear things. So, I mean, certainly if you had just as a toy example, if you had a robot that could go to MIT, Tsinghua University and Moscow University and go through all the classes and get a fair PhD without cheating, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this would be quite interesting. Like getting a technical PhD, by definition, involves advancing knowledge beyond what had been done before, right? And there's also a social aspect there. You're defending your thesis to your peers in a room. You're understanding the practicalities of what you've been asked to do. I would say if an AGI could do that without need for humans to help, right? So that's not necessarily a super intelligence. That's a human level intelligence, right? Now this, I guess, is a subcase almost of Sam Altman saying like AI can do 90% of human jobs. We'll consider it an AGI. But the problem I have with that is if you pick the 90% of human jobs that don't involve fundamental imagination or generalization, I mean, then you're not making AGIs that could advance culture and arts and science and math and engineering the way people can. So, I mean, I think, but if you could do essentially every human job, including the jobs that are actually advancing science, engineering, and culture in a fundamental way, I mean, then you're there, right? I mean, not yet to a super intelligence, but probably it's not far from there to probably not far from there to a super intelligence. Now, I also think we're all going to know qualitatively, actually. So if you look at ChatGPT, like, so my mom, she's 81 now. She's a teacher. She used to be a social work executive. She's not a technical person. She's got a fine technical mind, but she didn't go that direction. When she first interacted with like GPT-4, she's like, amazing, this thing is really smart. After like 3 hours, she's like, oh, okay, I see. I mean, yes, some people are crazy and they're fooled by these systems, but most people aren't actually. Ordinary people have become pretty good at working around the strengths and weaknesses of these systems, right? You probably have too. So I think once we have something that's actually generally intelligent, people are going to understand and sense that perfectly well. Like if you had a chatbot, it doesn't have to be a chatbot, but if you had a chatbot that actually understood the context of the questions it was answering and that could reflect on its own statements and understood who it was and who you were, and understood when it had made a mistake, understood what that meant and could connect that to the situation it was in, like, and that could now and then make up something new that was beyond what was fed into it. I actually think people will qualitatively understand that perfectly well, even without a rigorous test. Now, I think that same system will be able to get a PhD from MIT or Tsinghua anyway, right?
So is the because maybe we get beyond the scope of just pure intelligence, that it does sound like we're saying AGI is human-like intelligence or human-level intelligence, that it does need the capacity to make those imaginative leaps.
Sure.
Where it's, the LLMs are really good right now, but again, they're trained on all of the data that we generated, right? So it's like a probability engine looking at all of the information, data, knowledge that we actually have discovered.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of parasitizing on us in that way. It's not like the LLM makes its own imaginative leaps.
Right, but we're parasitizing in all human history too.
Is that even a component of intelligence? The ability to make the imaginative leap, or is this something
and every
separate?
1 and 2 year old kid does it all the time. I mean, the amount of imaginative leaps made by young children just to get to the kindergarten level is tremendous.
But we don't have that in artificial form yet at all.
Not very well, no. And it's not. There's not so much of a business model for that until you're layering it on top of something with a lot of knowledge, right? Like, there's not much business model for a 1 or 2 year old kid, right? I mean, in fact, they drain our resources tremendously until they get to a certain point, right? So, I mean, I think if we'd been focusing on that instead of on tools to make people money, we could have that now. But that's not what's driven the AI field. The AI field has been driven initially by military and espionage, and now by internet companies wanting to keep people clicking on their website, and making an artificial baby or toddler is not helpful for any of those things.
If I'm thinking about the plight of the entrepreneur, right, that looks out on the world, says, "Oh, I identified a problem and a creative solution to it, and I'm going to take it to market." They're operating on more or less the same data that's available to an LLM, but they've done something differently there. They've taken this imaginative leap, like maybe this is a skin in the game thing too. They're putting their skin in the game, right? They're putting capital at risk. They're putting their idea into the wild.
I mean, most of entrepreneurship is execution, not ideas, right? I mean,
that's what execution is. Putting your idea into the wild, putting your capital at risk, building a team, bringing a product to market, all of these things. So I guess the question is, they both have the same availability of the same underlying data, the LLM and the entrepreneur. What is the entrepreneur doing that the LLM can't? So there's a very special place called the farm at Okefenokee. It's a 1,000-acre regenerative farm community about 45 minutes northwest of Jacksonville, Florida. The farm is a completely off-grid community. It has total food, water, and energy independence. Everything on the farm is 100% organic, and it even features wild boar and bear hunting. The farm at Okefenokee is right next to the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, where you can do camping and canoeing tours. So if you're like me and you're interested in the self-sovereign lifestyle, then you can get your own lot on the farm at Okefenokee if you tell them that I sent you. Once you get a lot, you can build one of 3 custom cabin options. So if you value freedom, self-sovereignty, and living in touch with nature, then join me and my family. We have lot number 21, and we're going to be building a cabin there starting December 2025. To learn more about the farm at Okefenokee, go to okefarm.com and make sure to tell them that I sent you.
Either being face-to-face with other people or giving a video speech, or just them knowing that it's this other guy there is important. And some kinds of businesses are heavy on that rather than being profoundly innovative, really. Some sorts of entrepreneurship probably do involve like taking a leap beyond your training distribution and imaginatively pivoting in a way that an LLM isn't good at doing. I'm not sure that's a majority of cases, actually. I mean, certainly it has happened, though. Like when you look at what Zuckerberg did to move Facebook forward, I mean, probably the first idea of just social network for university students, simple idea. Others had it also. If an LLM had been around then, it could have that idea. Executing it required a whole bunch of human stuff
Yeah.
just among that student body, which you need to be a human embodied in that community.
Yeah.
But I would say that the pivots that Facebook made over time to go from like a social network for students into what it became, I mean, many of those pivots probably involve leaping beyond the training distribution, right?
Sure.
Like there was some imagination
Right.
there, just like Amazon pivoting from books to AWS, right? Like there's probably some imagination there at a few critical junctures, and that is because what LLMs are doing in a very sophisticated way, they're looking up all the cases they've seen in history, right, and then
Tokenizing.
they're kind of extrapolating from those cases. Then they're doing it in a very sophisticated way, but every now and then a human does something that violates the extrapolation from special cases. Like in music, I've thought about this because I'm also a musician, and I mean, if you trained an LLM-like system on all music up to the year 1900, like what's it going to generate? It may generate beautiful, like it may finish the unfinished symphony, right? But it's not going to invent like neoclassical metal. It's, if you ask it to Western classical music and West African rhythm together, it will put like Beethoven to a polyrhythm. But what Duke Ellington did was quite different than that, right? And what you find is we are abstracting in a way that lets us leap beyond our training data, and that abstraction for us is grounded in our embodiment and our life as embodied organisms, right? Like when Duke Ellington put together chord patterns from Western classical music together with rhythms which are simplified versions of like West African music, right? Like that was how it made his body, the swing, right? That's like how it made his body feel. It was like grounded in the breathing and heart beating
and
and
the soul.
Yeah. And what's it like to be in the room with other people and moving together with them, right? So we abstract partly by bringing things back to the ground of our embodied life and our social life, and like that lets us leap beyond our particular experience. That's probably also a limited way of doing it, right? Like if you look in music, we're not going to invent music that has like polyrhythm among 100 different channels or something, like, because we can't hear it and nobody can dance to it, right? So we have an ability to abstract beyond our experience. As you say, it's largely by tying things down to metaphors to our embodied life,
right?
Which is more powerful than what ChatGPT does, but also limited, right?
Yeah.
And if you could imagine as a thought experiment, what if you could port yourself up to any body, right? Then once you'd poured yourself to a space octopus, like different metaphors would occur to you.
Of course.
You come up with different mathematics with different abstractions. So, and AGI should be able to do that, right?
And then we just would not be able to understand anything that said, though, because it would be metaphorizing from a body that we don't have.
I would say so here's an
maybe it could serve us and be benevolent and giving us new knowledge and inventions.
So there's an interesting question one can think about this was it was provoked by the science fiction novel Diaspora by Greg Egan. So in that novel, our universe is threatened by some gamma ray burst. So people port themselves out of our universe into the 5-dimensional macro universe, right? Then there's some aliens there. We can't communicate with these aliens. So what happens is a bunch of intermediate minds are built. So the interesting question is, in what sense is that really possible, right? And in some cases it may be, in other cases not. What you conclude is if, in a way, the topology of the alien mind is too different, there's no way to build a bridge. And you can think about it like if you have a globe over here and a donut over here. Like these are different topologies, right? This is genus 0, this is genus 1 in topology language. There's no way to continuously morph
one into the
sphere
other.
into the donut. At some point, there's just a fundamental discontinuity, right?
Yeah.
And that will be the case eventually.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I think we could get to superhuman AGIs without going there. Like, I think we could get to at least mildly superhuman AGI without building systems that are just cognitively incommensurable with us, and you can't even build a bridge, right?
Okay. All right. So
yeah.
It's a lot to absorb. All right. This whole artificial general intelligence, do you think this is something, because it does seem like if we look backwards, the evolution of the universe and the evolution of life, it has tended toward greater complexification.
Sure. Yeah.
So is this just a natural extension of that universal T-loss? If it is a universal T-loss, like, are we just the, intermediate organism for the emergence of AI in the same way that
That's
I don't
what
know?
Elon Musk said we're the bootloader for the AGI.
The bootloader for the AGI. Yeah. Is that how you view this? Is like this is some kind of like grand cosmological sequence? It's, maktub, it's predestined, it's just part of the progression of the universe, or is this something idiosyncratic and unique to us?
A little of both. I mean, sure, you can look at it in the cosmic view. You had the infinitely hot and dense dot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you had the, 300 million years or something before particles congealed, right? And then you got particles congealing, then you had stars, and then you had planets, and you have life emerging from the primordial soup with autocatalytic networks of chemicals, and you have single multi-cell organisms, and then you get us, and then you will get something else even more complex than us. So that probably is the right way to look at it in the cosmic sense. Now, does that mean our purpose is to give rise to something else? I mean, it's like, is the purpose of small mammals to give rise to humans? If you ask a small mammal, no, their purpose is to get food and mate and have a good time, right?
Yeah.
And also, just because I'm more generally intelligent than a small mammal doesn't give me a great urge to go and slaughter all squirrels out in Yellowstone Park, right? I mean,
man, you haven't lived until you've tried to slaughter all squirrels.
I've slaughtered a couple, it was all right. But they're not even the tastiest animal out there. So, I mean, I think in a favorable scenario, humans will persist and continue to do their thing, just as ants and squirrels are persisting and continuing to do their thing, and one-celled organisms are.
Right.
But we may give rise to other minds that are
They'll
as far beyond us as we are beyond amoebas, let alone squirrels. And indeed, from this cosmic evolutionary view, whether our particular organism and species persists or not is an irrelevancy, right?
Sure.
Like the particular great ape-like thing that gave rise to us seems not to be around anymore.
Yeah.
Other great apes are around now, and we're undertaking some effort to preserve them. And we would probably rather if our predecessors were still around in precise form, but hey, right? So from that cosmic view, sure, we're just one step in
one block
the chain.
In the chain, right?
I mean, from my personal view, if a robot comes and tries to repurpose my kids, I'll try to blow up that robot.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
But I mean that's my own personal situated perspective. I do think though we shouldn't look at the emergence of AGI and ASI superintelligence from a perspective of extreme scarcity. Like I know Eliezer Yudkowsky, who I used to work with, who's a sort of AGI existential risk pundit. He has this saying like, the AI does not love you. The AI does not hate you, but he can use your atoms for something else, right? And I mean, that's kind of true. On the other hand, it's projecting a scarcity rather than abundance mindset, right? And like we could use Yellowstone Park for something else too. And, some of our national leaders might like to, but on the whole,
Yeah.
We're letting the squirrels romp around there.
Yeah.
We're not micromanaging their choice of mates or which tree to climb up. And if they get a plague, we may go in and distribute some
Try to help
medication. Now, if they run out of the park, they may get flattened by a semi too, right? But the point is, even in our relative domain of scarcity, like we're not trying to use every other animal's atoms for something else. So this, I keep referencing science fiction, but do you know Accelerando by Charles Stross?
No.
That's a great one.
Okay.
This pretty much anticipated Bitcoin and crypto in 2005 or whenever it was written. I mean, he had a whole economy scripted in Python in the novel back then, as well as other fun things like Superintelligent mind uploaded lobsters in a satellite or something. But so what happened there? People scripted these intelligent companies in Python, like companies with corporate bylaws written in Python code, which basically smart contracts before we had that concept, right?
Yeah.
And then these AI companies quickly took over the world economy, but they also quickly got bored with it. And so they took the inner planets, made them into these Dyson spheres around the sun, ported themselves into these computers and these spheres around the sun, and just occupied that, carrying out complex, multidimensional auctions with each other. And they just viewed humans as really inefficient economic auctioning agents, right? But they, on the other hand, they weren't so hungry for resources that they repurposed the Earth. They're like, well, there's plenty of matter in these other planets. We'll go there, carry out our advanced economic games, and leave you to carry out your stupid economic games on Earth, right? And you could say, well, yeah, but they could take over Earth too, right? But I mean,
we could take over the squirrels.
Yeah, presumably. And it's not megalomania. It's not, and megalomania and psychopathology are not guaranteed in the AI, right?
Right.
If we try to engineer them not to be megalomaniacal and psychopathic, maybe they won't be, right?
Yeah.
And of course, we can't rule out 100% that they might turn against us.
Sure.
But this comes back to the centralization versus decentralization, right? So you might think if the initial AI you build is not centralized and is not trying to take power over everything and is built with, a positive ethos of live and let live, right? Then perhaps it will continue with that ethos as it evolves to superintelligence. If the early stage AGI, if what it's doing is trying to make sure one country has hegemony over all others, or one company squashes all the competition.
And that it is our responsibility to impart some, human-centered ethicality to it so that it does not go down one of these dark paths as it relates to humanity. Is this, okay, I want to ask you about consciousness.
All right.
Because again, we've talked about imagination, we've talked about intelligence, consciousness. I don't know how you distinguish that from the former two. And then is artificial intelligence participating in consciousness? Are we trying to create a synthetic consciousness? Like how does consciousness play into this?
Consciousness is one of the more confusing words out there, right?
Sure.
I mean, but
it's the hard problem, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, my personal perspective on consciousness is what you would call panpsychist. So, I mean, I think some element of consciousness is
in everything.
Yeah. And this was clear to me when I started meditating at age like 7 or 8. It was more clear in my teens when I started on psychedelics, right? You can feel that consciousness is in everything. And once you get that feeling, it starts to seem absurd when people are like, no, this object here has no universal consciousness. Like, okay, if it's not in consciousness, how are you perceiving it? Right? And I mean, this argument has been laid out by many philosophers. There's a book by the philosopher Galen Strawson called Physicalism Entails Panpsychism. And he's sort of trying to deconstruct what it would mean for something not to be conscious. Like, how would some non-conscious thing be inside the consciousness of a conscious entity that you would even know it was there? Like, what would that bridge be between the conscious and non-conscious? What I found is in the East, panpsychism is assumed. Like, basically everyone assumes everything in the universe is conscious. Interestingly, in the East, it's also generally assumed that when we create AGIs, they will be our friends and will be helpful to people. Whereas in America, it's a little bit different. Yeah. We assume the first thing an AGI will want to do, of course, is kill everybody. Because, and we also assume that we may be the only things that are conscious and everything else is some sort of inert dead matter, right? So you realize these default assumptions are culturally dependent. And indeed, what started me meditating at age 7 was my mom was doing graduate work for Chinese history, and she had all these books about Buddha and stuff that she brought home. So it is, the questions that we think are hard are not considered hard by most of the world's population, actually. The hard problem. So one way to look at the hard problem of consciousness, which to simplify is like, how is the feeling of being consciousness connected with the dynamics associated with consciousness in a brain or in a computer system? One way to look at the hard problem of consciousness is it's just exposing a fundamental flaw in the modern Western worldview, which was not there in any previous human culture and is not there in Asian or African culture right now. Now, I do think there will be ways to interrogate this scientifically, though, and brain-computer interfacing should be very, very interesting, right? So, like, imagine we had chips in our brains and we enabled some sort of Wi-Fi telepathy, right? You can imagine as we increase the bandwidth between, you would imagine if that happened and you put your hand in hot water, like I would feel what that felt like to you. And it could be interesting, right? Like I could feel like, well, you know, hot water doesn't feel as bad to him as it does to me. Or, that's what it's like to enjoy the taste of mayonnaise instead of hating mayonnaise, right? Now,
I do hate mayonnaise.
You hate mayonnaise too. Well, we're not going to get that. Yeah, it's terrible. How do people like that?
I don't
get it. Yeah, it's so slimy. And now imagine you Wi-Fi'd your brain into the brain of a rat or a pigeon, right? Or a lion as it's making a kill. Right. Now imagine your Wi-Fi. I would imagine it would feel like something, because I do think mammals are conscious in most of the same senses that we are. Imagine you Wi-Fi your brain into the brain of a fish. I'm less certain what it feels like to be a fish. Now imagine you Wi-Fi your brain into like an app on your phone. I would imagine it doesn't feel like much to be an app on a phone. I imagine it doesn't feel like much to be ChatGPT, but maybe a little bit. Like maybe that in context learning has some self-organizing attractor that feels like something.
Right.
Now imagine you take a human level AGI and you kind of Wi-Fi telepathy your brain into it, right? Can you feel what it is to be that human level AGI as you like its cognitive attractors sink in with your brain's cognitive attractors, right? I mean, that would be interesting, right? Because that's second person experience, right?
Yeah.
It's not just your first person experience of being yourself.
All right, I'm going to share something with you, and then I want to ask you a question about it. So at this point in my life, I think I have a monopsychism ontology. And again, it's just sort of metaphorically driven.
That means only you are conscious and everything else is inanimate.
No, like so psyche as in soul.
I see.
Like one, it's all one. Yeah. Instead of many, pan is like everything has consciousness. Is like there's kind of one soul. The whole thing is one soul, one cosmos, one soul.
Yeah.
And the thought there is like the metaphor of the individual organism. Like I am an ecology of trillions of microorganisms that are somehow cohered into this one identity of, self.
Sure.
And so I was just thinking that maybe we are, as above, so below. We are the microorganisms to the cosmic macroorganism. So why and I don't know a lot about panpsychism. Why many, not one?
We're all neurons in the global brain, right?
Yeah. So this is like, why panpsychism as in many things have consciousness versus it's all one consciousness, which would also explain like how we're interconnected, I think.
I think these are both true. And this would be what you'd refer to as as non-dualism in spiritual philosophy, right? I mean, if your neuron has some consciousness as an entity, which is, taking in electricity, spurting out electricity through various chemical reactions, your neuron has its own consciousness, but you as an emergent entity also have your own consciousness.
Got it.
And I think it is distinct from the consciousness of your neuron. And if you were in, say, a rock band or something, you can feel like the band has its own consciousness also. Like there's some emergent reality there, right? But it is different than the consciousness in your own head. And so if you dig into the academic philosophy literature on panpsychism, the hardest problems people try to deal with are these multiple levels of coherency, right? Like, what does it mean for there to be consciousness on this emergent level, then the next emergent level, then the next emergent level up? So, in a way, yes, there is one universal consciousness, but then there's also the observed fact that within our own states of consciousness, we don't always feel like there is one universal consciousness. Now, maybe that's because we're all unenlightened, and our neurons are all unenlightened. But that is the nature of the order of reality that we're in, right? So, and then the fact that there's this one consciousness, but there are parts of it that don't feel like there's just one consciousness, and they are acting in accordance with this feeling of separation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's non-duality, but that is the reality of the world that we're in right now, right? And that's somehow that ties in with the notion of open-ended intelligence as individuation plus self-transcendence, right? Because the self-transcendence is sort of expanding your sphere of consciousness toward the universal consciousness. Individuation is reinforcing that boundary that separates off your consciousness. And then you have a critical role of time there, right? Enabling separated off systems to more and more realize their fusion with universal consciousness.
And you can never, so far as we know, that there is no view from nowhere, right? There is no ability to see all things at once with perfect clarity. Like you get into the Gödelian problems and the Heisenberg uncertainty principle and all these things that just say like, no, that's not even logically or physically possible.
I've had that feeling before. I don't know how to validate it or refute it. Right?
I've had that experience also in meditation, that sort of like, I don't know what they call it, the pure consciousness event, I think, where you just kind of get hit.
Consciousness without an object.
The eternity of all the things. But then it's still like, I don't have anything to articulate about it. Like you can, I think I may have had a pure consciousness event, but it's like, you're not bringing any of that back down
the
to
Tao
2D.
That can be named is not the true Tao. Right?
Exactly. So, I guess that's what we're always running into, is just the limitations of the natural language that we're confined to.
I think that, to quote my favorite quote from President Bill Clinton, it all depends what the meaning of is.
Is. It's all about ontology.
Yeah.
If you're a Bitcoiner, you need the Orange Club app. It's where you can connect with other sovereign individuals locally and globally. It's great for when you travel, to meet local Bitcoiners, to go to Bitcoin meetups, and to discover local merchants that accept sats. No distractions, no noise, just real Bitcoiners. So download the Orange Club app today and find your local Bitcoin tribe. Yeah, I think, and I have no idea, it's very far out, but I feel like my intuition says that the incomprehensibility of things, or the things that are beyond our comprehension, have to do with higher dimensionality. Like the example always, have you heard of the book Flatland, right? Where they're in the, beings in the two-dimensional world. But like the idea of if a universe was just that two-dimensional sheet of paper, and a sphere actually moves through that two-dimensional piece of paper, from the perspective of the two-dimensional participants in the universe, they just see a dot appear, a circle expand as the sphere is moving through, then the circle contract as the sphere is moving out, and then the dot disappear.
Yeah.
So they just saw two opposite things happen, right? Something appeared, expanded, contracted, and then disappeared. But in reality, from the higher dimensional perspective, it was just one motion, right? So it's like, it seems like there's, again, we can't talk about these things very well, but we can point to that as a metaphor for like, okay, there's fourth, fifth, sixth. I think physics says there's 11 dimensions. Is that right?
Depends on your theory of physics. Yeah, there's some variants of string theory which say there's 11 dimensions, but these are complex variable dimensions. So each of these is a two-dimensional dimension. This is an example I've sometimes given about the limitations of human intelligence and why we're not maximally general intelligence. Is like, how well can you run a maze in 750 dimensions, right? I get lost in the hedge maze in 2 dimensions, right?
So what?
But from an AGI's point of view, a 750 dimensional maze may be just another data structure to traverse, a good point.
Right? Would AGI be subjected to those same limitations? Because I mean, presumably, again, even if the laptop were its body.
Well, if you believe in the laws of physics, just as a provisional assumption, there's some limitations you ultimately get to.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a certain amount of mass, certain amount of information you can pack in a certain amount of mass energy, right? And there are speed limits on information transmission. So you will eventually hit limits for any AGI system, assuming known physics is correct. Those limits are way, way, way beyond human level intelligence or any system that we're going to directly build ourselves. On the other hand, there is no consistent and complete theory of physics at the moment.
That's right.
So then taking
and isn't that impossible? Isn't that what Goertzel showed us? You can't have consistent and complete systems.
But he didn't show that you can't have a coherent physical theory summarizing all physical observations we've made, and we don't have that, right?
Well, I mean, my understanding of it was that he showed that it's basically physically impossible to have a system that is totally comprehensive. You know, that basically map equals territory. He was saying that that's not possible.
Goertzel's second incompleteness theorem, what it shows is that if you have a mathematical system that's complex enough to do basic algebra of addition and multiplication, then that mathematical system cannot be both consistent and complete, right? Another way to frame that is to say you can't prove a 20-pound theorem with a 10-pound formal system. Like every mathematical axiom system has a certain algorithmic complexity to it, and there are going to be some things more complex than that. Than that axiom system. However, our physical universe doesn't have to be infinite, right? So, I mean, our physical universe could just be some specific finite system.
Yeah.
And there could be some specific way to summarize everything there is to be said about our specific physical universe. Because Goertzel's theorem is just about, as mathematical statements become arbitrarily complex, right? Like no formal system can say whether all of them are true or false. But if you think about it, like all scientific data ever gathered is one finite set of bits, right? Could you come up with some coherent, consistent explanation of that finite set of bits, summarizing all scientific knowledge? I guess you could, but we haven't. That's the point. Like our theory of gravity is mathematically inconsistent with our theory of quantum mechanics. So even just given the finite data set of scientific observations we have now, we don't have a logically coherent way to deal with all of it, which means that using physics to say what are the limits on a superintelligence is a bit premature, right? Because we don't even have a coherent explanation of it. All the observations we agree are real, right? And that's where we're at now, right? And this could even become relevant to AGI design at some point, right? I mean, it's not relevant to quantum computing, but it will be relevant to like femtocomputing or something when we get there, right? Like building computers that have quarks and gluons or something, right? Once you get there, then, you know, maybe physics beyond our current understanding becomes relevant to how do these machines get built. Now, we won't build those machines, but like, could we build a nano computer doing quantum computing that then builds a femtocomputer exploiting weird mechanics that we don't understand now? I mean, what's interesting is this could happen quite fast because these machines can happen much faster than they can do things much faster than we can. So this gets into something we were informally chatting about before the podcast started. Like I'm an optimist that we can get to human level AGI in some small integer number of years. It could be 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. And I think once we get to a human level AGI, that thing can then create a superintelligence within a few more years after that. So I think it's quite plausible within 10 years we will have machines that are immeasurably smarter than human beings. And I mean, this is why I think decentralized AGI is so important, because I think that making AGI not controlled by any one of the warlords or corporate profit maximizers that now control the big centralized entities on the planet. I mean, having AGI that's open and decentralized, more like Linux or the internet, is the best path to making these AGIs and superintelligences not be megalomaniacal psychopaths, right?
Yeah.
And I see that as something important to do over the next few years, right? Now, if I thought AGI was 50 years off, I wouldn't see that as so critically important. Right?
So the timeline that you assign to that, I mean, what is the evidence supporting that view? I mean, because it's got to just be a guesstimate, right? Like, we don't have any historical parallel to this.
No. So, I mean, Ray Kurzweil, who's been a friend of mine for a while, in 2005, which is the same year I published the book Artificial General Intelligence, to put that term on the map, he published the book The Singularity is Near.
Yeah.
What he was looking at there was very crudely, like, based on what we know about the brain, in what year will a computer have the same processing power as the human brain seems to have?
So just Moore's law.
Yeah, and allied laws about RAM and cache and so on. He came up with 2029. Then he asked, in what year will a single computer have the same processing power as the whole human species? He came up with 2045. And that's where he decided human level AGI 2029, superintelligence 2045. I think once you get to human level AGI, you can be at superintelligence within years, not 16 years. Just
it sounds a lot like a runaway chain reaction.
But that's not. It's not the only evidence, right? I mean, I would say even though LLMs are not AGI, like the fact that we have these chatbots that can win the math Olympiad is certainly something, right?
Sure.
I mean, LLMs are evidence of progress toward AGI, even if those specific systems will only be part of the architecture that gets us to AGI.
So again, there's this feeling that the way you're describing this is like we achieve a certain level of just AGI, and then it starts on its path to creating superintelligence.
That's the so-called intelligence explosion.
The intelligence explosion. Would we even, we don't even know if we would be a part of that? Like, there's a possibility we create this thing and it just goes stealth and starts doing its own thing. And doesn't
That's why it's
us.
important how we do it. Yeah.
Okay. So there is this, there's definitely an element of uncontrollability associated with this whole thing.
For sure. On the other hand, if we eliminate AI from the picture, there's an element of uncontrollability, even if people want to stop AI development. Like, China is not going to stop it because Trump says so, and vice versa.
Yeah. So what, I mean, in terms of the ethical considerations, being a good midwife, to use that metaphor for the evolution of AI, what does that even mean? What should people be doing anything? Should people be like, what does that even mean? Or is this just for the AI developers? Like, hey, you guys need to, read some ethics and philosophy before you do your work.
I think at this moment, obviously the AI developers are in the hot seat, but I would say, suppose we have a system that's like ChatGPT, but is actually learning from every interaction and being shaped by every interaction, which is not the case with current LLMs. Like the model is fixed, right? Once you have LLMs or post-LLM systems that are learning from every interaction that have their actual model of the world shaped by how you interact with them, then in a very real sense, we are all bringing up that baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think there will be a period when you have an advanced proto-AGI, which is really learning from each interaction as it goes. And then in that period, we're all contributing to it by our interactions for better and for worse, right? Like it's learning from 4chan, Reddit, and YouTube comments as well as from everything else.
Right. Interesting. Okay.
As well as from this podcast, right?
Yeah. Well, that's it's just mind blowing. Again, there's nothing to grab onto historically. Like we don't for most innovations, you're like, oh, this is kind of like, we often say Bitcoin's like the printing press or like fire or like the wheel or like the number zero. There's kind of like, different blind men grasping the elephant. But it feels like with AI, there's not much there. It's like maybe you would compare it to the development of natural language or something, but that's so ancient and
I've thought about that. It's like if once the first cavemen developed language with phrase structure grammar, what would they think it was going to evolve into? That they would not foresee Facebook or the differential calculus, right?
Of course, yeah.
They might say, well, yeah, I can tell my son what grandpa was like, or I can go to the next village and convince some girl to come to my village and tell her how great it is. But they're not going to be able to follow too many steps on from the evolution of language, right?
Yeah. So there is no good historical allegory for this.
Cambrian explosion, emergence of multicellular life.
Okay.
I mean, that was a big one, right?
Right. So nothing in our cultural technology
No, I mean,
history.
of course, the emergence of the human species.
Yes.
Itself, like we brought together language and tool building. And
yes.
And here we are, and that the emergence of the human species. There's continuity, but there's a very big discontinuity, and this is probably another discontinuity of that order, if not bigger. Yeah.
And are we giving birth to a new species?
Yeah, but it's utterly not the case now. Like the closest we can come is like sex selection or something. You can't really craft the mind and body of. You can't even try to craft the mind and body of your baby.
But an AGI could probably help us to that end, right?
It could help us do that. But I guess my point is that engineering-based design does have different properties than pure evolution and self-organization.
Right.
And what we have is a mix, right? It's not pure
nature.
It's not pure design and it's not pure self-organizing emergence and evolution.
Yeah.
I mean, the next step when the AGI builds the ASI may be more dialed toward the rational design.
Yeah.
But there still is going to be some self-organizing evolutionary aspect to that stage also.
It's deeply fascinating. Believe it or not, we're coming up on our time here.
We've not solved every problem.
Dr. Goertzel, no, we have not. But it's been very fascinating. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your perspectives. Closing words of wisdom for people going through this time of great tumult and transition.
I mean, I have 3 adult kids who've sort of already found their own path, and 2 little kids who are too young to worry about it. But my niece is 13, my sister's daughter, and she and her friends, they're thinking about this like, well, is there use to me going to college after high school? Like, should I be thinking about what job to get? Will there be any jobs left? Like, which job should I bother to try to prepare for? And what's a waste of time? Because ChatGPT will do it later, right? So I see like these middle schoolers are actively thinking through all this, and they're asking me for advice on it because I know I'm the local AI guy, right? So, I mean, the best I come up with for them is like obvious advice, like learn how to learn, like don't pin yourself down, be flexible, right? Like learn how to pivot to whatever weird thing comes your way, because whatever else is going to happen between here and the potentially utopic post-singularity future, there's going to be a lot of pivoting that we all have to do. Like the Holy Grail isn't become a plumber, right? Because who knows when the plumber bot will be rolled out, right?
Yeah.
And we're not good at predicting which things AI is going to do first.
Right.
But it's pretty clear that being able to learn new things quickly and pivot to new things quickly is going to be a big
key.
plus. I mean, the other general advice I tend to give is like until the AGI has really taken over everything, like facility at dealing with other humans is going to be valuable. Like going down a particular technical rabbit hole. I mean, some people are going to do it if that's what they want to do. That's what I like to do. But that particular rabbit hole, you don't know when that's going to be obsoleted, right? So being able to deal with other people and like translating between technical rabbit holes and human networks, I mean, probably will continue to be useful as long as humans are having any influence, right? I mean, also, I'm a mathematician originally, so I'm definitely a fan of people getting basic understanding of math. Like again, until AI has taken over all science and engineering, it all relies on math in some element or another. So in a way, you got to learn how to learn, and master the basics, which means mathematics, philosophy. It also means like the basics of how to win friends and influence people, right? And the having mastered the basics will then help you to pivot to whatever weird shit the world throws at you.
Beautiful. Optimize for adaptability.
Absolutely.
Good advice.
The evolution of evolvability is what we're living through.
Evolving your evolvability. Love that. Well, thank you for coming. This has been awesome. Where can people find you online or find your work online?
Yeah, so there's SingularityNET.io, Superintelligence.io are a couple decentralized AI projects I'm involved with. And my personal website is Goertzel.org, Goertzel.org. So there's loads of online information. I for those who are able to still absorb long series of words, my friend Gabriel Axel and I wrote a book last year called The Consciousness Explosion. Go to theconsciousnessexplosion.ai. You can download it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We lock our doors, we encrypt our hard drives, and we use strong passwords. But most people leave one thing wide open: their phone line. SIM swap attacks are one of the fastest growing methods of digital theft. In minutes, a hacker can clone your accounts, reset your passwords, and drain your life. Unfortunately, this is not science fiction. It happens every single day. Efani is the only mobile service protection designed exclusively to protect you from SIM swap attacks. Efani offers military-grade encryption on their product and offers up to $5 million of SIM swap insurance. And to date, there have been exactly 0 SIM swaps on any of Efani's over 50,000 protected accounts. So you don't need to live in fear, you just need to protect your weakest link. Go to efani.com/breedlove to secure your phone line today. Again, that's Efani, EFANI.com/breedlove. For the past 25 years, I've been reading roughly 1 book per week. Almost entirely difficult nonfiction books, the kind that really shift your thinking. Books on physics, money, power, psychology, spirituality, and philosophy. The real stuff. But I get it. Most people don't have time to read 50 books per year. So I hand-selected my favorite nonfiction books and distilled each one of them into a course that you can take in 50 to 100 times faster than it would take you to read the entire book. Each course gives you the key insights, mental models, and frameworks that matter. We launched with 15 book courses, and we are building toward a library of 100 by the end of year 1. So if you are a seeker of truth, wisdom, and personal growth, then my book course is for you. To sign up, go to course.breedlove.io. Again, that's course.breedlove.io. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money. And be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.